Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Bedroom Maze. First story today is Help, I'm Stuck with a Horrible Flatmate by Silent Sunday 4720. May. So I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with this woman who is many years older than me. She's lived here for many years, and for me it's just been a year. At the beginning, we were quite nice. Looking back, I think it's because that was a highly stressful time for me and I didn't want any trouble, as I was new to the place. So I never said anything. She used to point out petty stuff and I agreed and corrected when it was genuinely my fault. She told me to keep the door open when I cook because apparently the whole house smells. I use spices in my food, but the same somehow doesn't apply to her when she's cooking fish. Today's fish is trout à la crème, and the whole house reeks. I have to wash my clothes only on Sunday because otherwise she's too poor to afford the extra $2 to $4 that it'll cost per month. One time, she booked a cleaning person on the wrong day. She can afford a cleaning person. And a random man was at the door first thing in the morning and I had no idea. I had opened up to her how extremely uncomfortable I am around unknown men. I had to literally keep a knife with me the whole time he was there cleaning the house. We laughed. I didn't say anything. She said she got the doorman a gift for his troubles. For me, not even a sorry. A few months ago, she yelled at me for no reason. I had told her something, she didn't listen properly, and she started yelling at me. She never apologized. Next, in the weeks leading up to my birthday, she had constant guests who used my space in the house. I didn't make a scene in front of them, but when I told her, she said it's not her problem if her literal siblings, her guests, use my space. Literally on my birthday, I had a few friends over. This was my first time inviting people. She made a scene in front of all my guests on my birthday at 11:08 p.m. because I had told her they would leave around 11 p.m. I let it go many times, but I had enough one day when I saw a dirty bathtub after her bath for the nth time. I asked her to clean the foam from the bathtub when she finishes her bath. She cut me off mid-sentence, started behaving like she was possessed. Very aggressively came close to my face and started yelling things and said she would not turn the tap on for that. It's clean soap bubbles and I can clean it myself. A few days ago, she left the house without telling me for 2 weeks. That must have been bliss for you. I had to ask her when she was coming back, when I noticed that she hasn't been home for the past week. I had exams, but I ended up cleaning the house when it wasn't my turn, and it was a huge inconvenience to me. Last week, she uploaded some bills to split, which she always makes mistakes with, so I have to recheck everything. This time, she also messed up the whole expense history, and she wants me to pay within 3 days. She uploads them from 3 months ago, whenever she has time, but I am expected to do everything as per her wishes. I am in between my exams and extremely stressed already. Now she's bought an AC for her room. Oh, she's got the electricity for that, has she? Which she uses 24/7. When I told her to pay that part of the bill herself, she told me to talk to the owner. For the record, AC adds $60 to $100 each month, Jesus fucking Christ, to the bill. I'm still doing my laundry on Sundays to save an additional $2 to $4. Also, she's using her air conditioner with the window and door open. Now that I think about it, I see the way she talks and turns the conversation around. If I have a problem, it's not her responsibility. But if she expects something, I have to do it. I always let it be and end up doing these things because I don't want more problems. But now I've had enough. Good. Recently, she entered the bathroom when I left obvious, usual signs that I'm inside. Since our bathroom doesn't lock, you can get little portable locks for it. Then she paused for some time with the door open until I responded, even when literal songs were playing on my phone. It took me time to say anything because I was shocked at what happened. She has confessed earlier to me that she's a closeted bisexual, but doesn't go that route because of religion. Then she's doing it wrong. I'm very positive she's covertly racist. When I told her how I felt about some of these things, she says she doesn't care about my interpretation. Like, what? How do I deal with this lady who thinks she's going to heaven because she fakes her personality to everybody outside? I really don't want to do what she's asking me this time. Unfortunately, I cannot afford to move elsewhere because I'm just a student, and this house was really pure luck for me, except for this bitchy woman, of course. I'm sure there's more that I missed, but this is already very long. Opinion suggestions are welcome. Why are you paying her money? You say she's not the owner. So if you have problems with how things are being done in the house, talk to the owner about it. As far as paying money, pay your share of bills and pay it when it's convenient for you to do so. Sounds like this bully you're living with has had it way too easy for too long. You've obviously found your backbone, you know how to use it, so use it. That's all you've got to do. Stand up to her. She won't like it, she'll yell, and if she lays one finger on you, great, have her arrested. I doubt she will, though. Alright, story number 2. First roommate turned out to become insane, by Castiel's Angel Blade. Hey, Asbot. I don't know if I'm genuinely crazy or just a shit person, or if I'm justified in being angry and hating this whole situation. Most people I've talked to about it are on my side, but I'm still doubting. For a bit of context, I'm female to male, 19, Hispanic, and grew up in my home country. I moved to the US mainland as a kid. My family is extremely religious and conservative and abusive. I'm trans and they are incredibly transphobic, homophobic, misogynistic, racist. They sound like delightful people I never want to meet. Etc., etc. I've been dealing with it for years, but last year I couldn't deal with it anymore, and since I was finally 18, I made a plan to leave, which was the sane choice. I had a friend, Sierra. She went to the same community college I do, and we both did theatre. She was the stage manager for a play I was in, and we became close quickly. When she learned about my situation, she expressed wanting to get me out of my parents' house and get me safe. It was a slow plan, originally, meant to happen after I got a job and had money. A friend of hers, Jules, was also in a terrible and abusive situation. Sierra's parents managed to rent out an apartment from some family friends of theirs, and Sierra and Jules moved in together. Sierra's parents pay one half of rent and utilities, while Jules pays the other half. I pay nothing. Unfortunately, things got ugly for me at home before I was allowed to get a job, and Sierra became desperate to get me out. So about 5 months into them living there, I slowly packed my stuff and brought it to my college, while Sierra would take everything to the apartment. And then one day I left to go to school and never came back home. I moved in with Sierra and Jules, and Sierra's parents paid pretty much all my stuff until I managed to find a job. Before I start, I want to make it clear that I'm incredibly grateful to Sierra and her parents for all their help. They spent a lot of time and money on helping me, and I am insanely grateful for them and everything they've done for me. I told them that several times. I've made it extremely clear that I'm grateful to them. With that out of the way, I will now continue. Before I even moved in, Jules was having issues with Sierra. Sierra has an abundant lack of respect for boundaries. Because her parents pay her way, I'm assuming. Her and her family are together all the time and do everything together, so this is how Sierra grew up. Before I even moved in, Jules was having issues with Sierra. Sierra had an abundant lack of respect for boundaries. Her and her family are all together all the time and do everything together, so this is how Sierra grew up. Jules and I lack our alone time and often prefer to do parallel play, being in the same room but doing our own thing. Sierra would get upset if we didn't actively do stuff with her when we were all home. And then she'd isolate. We'd all hung out and did stuff together often. She just would get mad at us if we wanted to do parallel play instead of once in a while, or alone time. Because Sierra would never give Jules any time to herself, Jules eventually had to just say, "Oop, 9 o'clock, I gotta go to bed, bye-bye," and retreat to her room just to be able to have some time to herself before bed. Sierra eventually started enforcing that bedtime and getting upset when Jules... How the fuck does she have a say? When Jules went to bed later than 9. She also gave me my bedtime of 2 a.m. and would get upset if I went to bed later than that. At school, she wanted to hang out with me every time we weren't in class and would get upset if I didn't hang out with her. She would get upset if I hung out with other people. She hates my best friend for past forgiven issues there's been between said best friend and I. Hated my ex for what she admitted to Jules was no real reason. And hated my current boyfriend because he was taking up all my time. We were hanging out once, maybe twice a week at this point in time. And she was jealous. She admitted this to Jules, who later told me about it when I was upset about the situation. In theatre, she would stare at me and watch only me during rehearsals and follow me around when we weren't on stage. It kind of sounds like from her point of view, her parents bought her a couple of friends and they're not being cooperative. When either Jules or I were upset, Sierra would baby us and treat us like we were completely incapable of understanding anything. When we were sick, no matter how mild, she wouldn't let us do anything for ourselves. No getting food, no grabbing a blanket, no grabbing something for entertainment. Which just increases how long it takes to recover if you can't do anything. She always did it herself, even when we asked her to please tone it down because we didn't appreciate that. She also would try to force us to take medicine when we didn't feel like we needed it, and would get upset if we didn't end up taking medicine. She also very often would make our traumas about herself. To make this clear, Sierra is white, skinny, and pretty, her dad was a cop, and his family is rich. Her only struggles have been her being neurodivergent and natural things like pets dying. I am not trying to diminish her struggles, but rather make it clear that she has not suffered through abuse or poverty, or as much discrimination or anything else that Jules and I, for example, have gone through. Jules and I are very clearly alt and queer. My parents are abusive, and she would cry and get extremely anxious every time I went to visit or see them after I moved away from them. Whenever they had come to my shows, she would have the same reaction. During the last show we did together, my parents came one time and I chose not to tell her until after because I did not want to deal with her. She still found out, but she stayed backstage when I went out to see them after the show. Later on the way back home, she told me that she started crying when she was backstage because she was so worried about me. Her mom also suffered through a lot of abuse and poverty as a kid and teen, and once, when her mom was giving Jules and I a talk about how she'd gone through that stuff too, Sierra grabbed and held her mom's hand. I'd assumed then it was because she wanted to comfort her mom, but it was the complete opposite. Her mom told us that Sierra was holding her hand to comfort herself rather than her mom. Her mom proceeded to tell Jules and I that if Sierra ever needed comfort through touch like cuddling or holding our hands, we needed to just let her. This was apparently a rule we were supposed to follow. Oh, they did buy her friends, okay. And they are now upset that we, or I, broke. She was controlling. She wanted things set up her way and wanted us to do what she wanted all the time, or otherwise we were bad friends or whatever. She would get upset when Jules and I wanted to watch other things instead of whatever she wanted to watch when we all hung out. Or if we didn't want to play the game she wanted, which she didn't actually play, she just had Jules play it while she told Jules what to do the whole time. While Sierra often drove me places, my boyfriend would almost always be the one to drive me if we hung out. But even when he was the one driving me, she expected to know exactly where I was at all times, and update her on my location no matter what, and she would get upset if I didn't. She was upset that I didn't play the music she liked in the car, despite telling me to play whatever I liked, and actively putting my music into her playlist. She and her stuff took most of the space in the apartment, including taking the biggest room despite having a lot less stuff than Jules. Meanwhile, Jules had an incredibly small bedroom with the tiniest closet I've ever seen, and Sierra got the biggest room by using the fact that the apartment was from her family's friends against Jules. She's Christian, but she doesn't really seem to practice the religion and only mentions it when she's trying to use it against us. Good Christian girl. Both Jules and I have a lot of religious trauma and are not fond of religion because of it. While we respect other people's religions and respect religious freedom, we do not participate in or believe in them. Specifically, Jules and I often say, "Oh my God," or "I swear to God." Sierra became upset about it, but only when it came to me, and told me I couldn't say "I swear to God" anymore because it made her uncomfortable. Try saying "merciful Zeus" or "in the name of Hera" or something like that, just to see where her reaction is. It is not something she ever asked of Jules, and I feel uncomfortable abiding by her religious rules when it's not my religion. I made it clear, and said I wouldn't be changing my vocabulary or rules that were hers to follow and not mine. Jules and I, while respectful of people's right to be religious, do not generally respect religion within itself, as we both believe that religion, or at least organized religion, has done a lot of harm to the world. When we would say something against religion, Sierra would become upset. Same if we said anything against cops or the government. We also couldn't ever speak about drugs or alcohol around her, despite her parents both being drinkers, and her mom a heavy smoker, and on that note, if I went out with my other friends and got high or drunk, I was not allowed to come home. I also wasn't given a key to the apartment, which her parents claimed was to avoid having me claim squatters' rights. Yeah, you don't live there, it's not your home. I'm sorry, but it's not. Which literally couldn't do even if I wanted to, but all right. I also slept on blankets on the floor throughout my entire time there, up until Sierra moved out, which was around the 7-month mark of me living there, and I was finally able to sleep on the bed. Came with the apartment. I did not even get an air mattress. Jules lent me a mattress foam topper they owned, as they weren't using it, and that helped a lot, but it was still not the most comfortable. But despite that, I did not complain. I was living there rent-free and didn't even have to worry about food, so I knew I was in no spot to complain and simply took what I was given and was more than grateful. Sierra constantly held the fact that she and her parents helped me over my head. Well, then they didn't really help you if they're using it to manipulate you. She used it as a way to manipulate me and make me feel bad for even needing help in the first place, despite her offering it and not taking no for an answer. She once said that she had a stressful year and used helping me as the worst example, despite her having lost 2 of her pets recently at that time, which I found to be another way of her trying to make me feel bad. I want to add that despite knowing that helping someone in my situation is hard and stressful, and trying to get her parents to help was stressful too, I don't think the situation was nearly as stressful for her as it was for me. I was running away from home, from an abusive household, where I was at the risk of being locked away from the world by my parents. They even called the cops to do a check on me, and my aunt showed up to my best friend's parents' house looking for me and made a scene. Whenever something happened that upset Sierra, she would completely ignore the issue instead of talking it out, and she would let it fester until she would blow up about it, instead of talking about what upset her and letting us try to fix it. She would give us the silent treatment and go to her parents' house. She refused to communicate despite preaching about how communication is good and necessary when she's talking and you're listening. Things that could have been resolved in a 2-minute convo the moment they happened were things that she would be upset about for weeks on end, and then explode on us for. For example, she and I usually got lunch from our college cafeteria. Because I had no money, she was buying me food. She became upset that we were spending too much money on lunch, but she didn't tell me anything until weeks later, when she ended up doing the whole "we need to talk" thing like it was something super serious. She went on this whole rant about how we were spending too much on food because she was having to buy me lunch too, and that we needed to start making lunch at home. She pretty much blamed it on me and made me feel really bad. I just said okay and started making myself lunch at home without complaint. I was fine making myself lunch at home. Later on, she actually became upset that we weren't spending all our lunches together anymore, because now that I wasn't having to go buy food at the cafeteria, I was spending my lunches in an area closer to my classroom to avoid walking so much. She was upset that we weren't spending as much time together. Sierra is incredibly good at manipulation. She can make you feel like the worst person in the world for the smallest thing. That's what always happened when Jules or I would have serious talks with her. She's amazing at guilt-tripping, and even better at making you feel things you don't actually feel. But when she would be mad at me for something, usually something small, she would go rant to Jules and would make Jules mad at me about it too, only for Jules to hang out with me later and be like, "Why am I mad at him? He's literally done nothing to be mad about." She would also be incredibly spiteful and petty when she would be mad at me, but she'd do it in the most childish way. Like sometimes she and Jules would have food that Sierra really liked for dinner while I wasn't home, and Sierra would say, "We can only eat this when OP isn't home because I'm mad at him, and he doesn't deserve to eat this delicious food." Meanwhile, I would be completely clueless about her being upset. Like I said, she refused to communicate with us. But when we did have talks, she would generally ignore what we'd say. For example, she constantly speaks with a baby voice. Think soft, all kind of mumbled together, R's become W's, oh dear, unironically, which was incredibly irritating for both Jules and I, as I don't like children and Jules works with them, so they come home tired and overwhelmed from dealing with children all day. And most of the time we couldn't understand what she was saying. Jules brought it up during one of those fix-it talks where we all sat down to talk about our grievances with one another, and asked Sierra to please stop the baby talk as it was getting old, and it was becoming irritating and frustrating. Sierra appeared to understand, said she would stop, and went maybe 2 days of speaking normally before she went back to the baby talk, and much more intensely this time. She is incredibly childish. She acts like a child all the time. She is a grown woman, older than me, but acts like a 5-year-old. She likes children's stuff and talks like a child and behaves like a child. Think running off in stores, looking at all the toys and showing them to their parents. Yeah, she did exactly this every time they went shopping with Jules and I, and would get upset if we didn't get super excited about whatever kid thing she was showing us while we were busy looking for specifics. And she communicates like a child. She would call her parents and little brother every single night to say goodnight, and would call her mom to rant every time she was upset. She also made her avoidance of cursing into a personality trait, and would tattletale on herself to her mom when she would curse. She would call or text her mom and say, "Mom, I said a bad word." Completely unironically, she's very self-centered, focusing on and making everything about herself and her own issues. Despite being the only one of us who doesn't work at all, she still very often would act like she was the only one of us who was tired. Meanwhile, I had school, theater, and an overnight job. I was going on practically no sleep several times a week, but all she could think about was the fact that she had to drive me to work. Like I mentioned before, Sierra is fairly privileged. Fairly. She is part of what I would consider an upper-middle-class white family, and her dad was a cop. She's never gone through poverty, and her parents pay for everything. She gets like $700 monthly just to fund whatever she wants. She's white, skinny, pretty. She's not outwardly queer or neurodivergent. Meanwhile, I'm Hispanic and queer, grew up in a country with a terrible economy, so I was very poor, and my family is very abusive, extremely religious, and anti-LGBTQ+, racist and misogynistic. She grew up being and feeling supported and loved, while I grew up having to hide everything about myself and to isolate in my room to avoid getting beaten by my brothers, or yelled at by my parents for some miscellaneous thing that wasn't even my fault. She would often say, "I understand," when I spoke about my struggles, then later prove with her actions that she didn't actually understand, i.e. liking my personal space and alone time because it made me feel safe, and she saying she understands only to later invade said personal space and get upset about me wanting time to myself. I sat her down eventually to have a conversation and told her she would never understand these things as she has grown up privileged. Oh no, I mean, people can learn. Absolutely no. She's capable of understanding. She's choosing not to learn. Not to mention, I did not say this negatively. I told her I was happy that she's had a good life, and I was very clear that I wasn't trying to be offensive, but rather realistic about the situation, when comparing our respective situations. She absolutely was and is privileged, but again, I was not saying this negatively, and I made that clear to her several times throughout the conversation. Her parents became incredibly upset about that, claiming that I couldn't call her privileged when I was the privileged one, because I had people to help me for free in my situation. Now yes, I've said it before and I will say it again. For someone in my situation, I am incredibly privileged, for having had people to help me the way they did. That does not ease Sierra's privilege. Her dad was especially mad about it because, as a cop, he's been called privileged many times by people who meant it offensively. I cleared it up with Sierra and later with her mom in person. As I have mentioned above, I am Hispanic and I speak Spanish fluently. This is something that was greatly fascinating to Sierra, and she would freak out in the good way every time I spoke Spanish or sang, both of which are as natural to me as breathing. She did not do this with anyone else. It made me uncomfortable. So I refused to speak Spanish or sing around her, as every time I did and she freaked out, I felt like an exotic animal in the zoo. Eventually, Sierra had this whole breakdown about stuff and yelled at Jules and I, because she said she was doing all the cleaning in the apartment, which was completely untrue. Jules and I also cleaned up after ourselves, and Sierra just over-cleaned the stuff that didn't actually need cleaning. She was mad that she was having to do the dishes. It was her assigned chore that she assigned to herself. Jules and I have our own assigned chores that we always did, and claimed that she was coming home from the theatre every night and cleaning. Also a lie. She only cleaned after theatre once, and it was her doing an unnecessary reorganization of the kitchen. The whole thing was incredibly disrespectful to Jules and I, as she was mad we were spending too much time sleeping when we were at home. Remember that we have actual jobs, and I was working an overnight shift at the time. After yelling at us for half an hour, crazy, she said she wasn't ready to hear what we had to say and left to spend the night at her parents', who live a couple of blocks away, by the way, without letting us say a word. I did not speak to her the next day. I was angry and needed time and space to cool off. This was the first and only time I gave her the silent treatment, compared to her dozens. She was very angry that I gave her the silent treatment. Eventually, this all culminated into her suddenly deciding she didn't want to renew the lease a month before it was supposed to end. She told me first, despite me not being on the lease, and because this place is owned by family friends of hers, Jules and I could not renew the lease on our own. While Jules and I had been already planning on moving out together, Sierra had no idea about this plan and was just going to let us go homeless, basically. She had a whole talk with me, and I was fucking fuming when she told me. But I just said I did not have the energy to argue or fight or curse her out. I also knew it was unhelpful and unnecessary. She was texting her mom throughout pretty much the whole convo, and she was upset about the situation as a whole. When she told her mom that she was upset, her mom asked verbatim, "What did he do to make you upset?" referring to me, and Sierra had to tell her that I hadn't done anything because I genuinely hadn't. That she was upset about the situation, and at the end of the conversation she said, "This isn't how the conversation was supposed to go. You were supposed to yell and curse at me." And I said, "I want to. I'm incredibly angry. But honestly, it's unnecessary and unhelpful, and I don't have the energy for it." She moved out a week after that conversation. She managed to get the lease extended for the summer, but was upset when we weren't ecstatic that she did that. It was the bare minimum to avoid making Jules and I homeless, especially when the situation was generally her fault. With the housing market how it is, and the very little money Jules and I make, finding a place has been impossible. The plan had always been that we would renew the lease when she went to college, one nearby that she could still just drive by every day, and would all still live together, which is why Jules and I were blindsided by the sudden decision that Sierra never discussed with us. Yes, Jules and I had secretly been planning to move out together, but it's a private rental, and the landlords would not have minded if they dissolved the lease. But now that I've explained Jules and I's side of the story, is Sierra insane? She's not insane, she's very sheltered though. Or are we insane? Because while most of my friends are on our side, I know they could be biased, and I want unbiased opinions. I do want to say that I'm not an angel, and was definitely not always super amazing. I took too long finding a job and did not do nearly as much as I should have in the apartment while I was unemployed. I also believe that is the extent of my sins. Please give me some feedback and let me know if I'm insane or if Sierra that is insane. No, she's not insane. As I say, she's just very, very privileged. And her parents are doing her a disservice, especially now that she's a grown-ass woman, by not teaching her to be more respectful, to more independent, to have and respect, just to respect other people's boundaries. That all falls squarely on her parents' shoulders. And only the work of a good therapist is probably going to fix that now, and I don't know, good luck making her go. Because she thinks she does no wrong, and she's got a whole family telling her that she's probably a perfect little angel that does no wrong. I mean, and I know that you say you're grateful for everything they did, but I'm going to be real blunt here. They didn't do any of that for you. They did that for her. I wasn't joking when I said she bought a couple of friends. That's pretty much what happened here. The fact of the matter is, in my opinion, of course, at the end of the day, it was good that you had that support while you needed it. Absolutely it was. Regardless of the motivation for doing it, you did benefit from that. And so while you should be appreciative of that, and you obviously are, you said you are, I think it's definitely for the best that she's gone now. Whether or not you'll be able to have any kind of friendship going forward, that's really up to the three of you. But if she ever wants to move in with you again, I'd nip that idea in the bud. But no one here is insane. Story number 3. Roommate mad at me for food habits. Am I in the wrong? What should I do? By Coin of Red. So my roommate and I are pretty young. First roommate I've ever had, actually. So here I am to check if this is normal, and I'm just out of the loop. I work at a local sandwich place. Bear with me, this is important. I would never disrespect you by not letting you talk about sandwiches. Sandwiches are excellent. Normally till closing. It's owned by this really sweet older couple, and since I am normally the last person in the shop, they let me take whatever is left over the day before new deliveries come in. Now, it changes week to week, of course, but it's typically a bunch of lunch meats and cheese, because who goes to a sandwich shop for ham and cheese, right? Now, being a college student, I will gladly take all the kinda old turkey and ham I can get my hands on. I like to make my sandwiches when I get home. But since I work late, I choose to do it later in the morning, or before my shower. This results in a sort of odd ritual of me getting up before the sun to assemble an ungodly amount of crappy sandwiches. But it works. Now to the roommate part. So, one day as I'm getting home, I check the fridge and notice a sandwich is gone. Not a terribly big deal. Agree to disagree. I do get them for free, after all. No, you get the ingredients for free. You make them yourself. But still a little rude. I asked my roommate if he could check with me before taking my food next time. The guy is pretty shy, so I tried being soft about it, I guess. I mostly just worry that it'll already be expired or something, and I don't want anyone to get sick, then he shouldn't take other people's food. But he kinda just muttered an excuse like, yeah, whatever, and slinked off to his room. Now, I think that's that. However, I start noticing more sandwiches missing. Now, obviously, I don't live purely off sandwiches. I like to give out some, friends, homeless, whoever. I make sure the ones I give out are fine to eat, of course. But he refuses to acknowledge that he even does it, as if I can't count. We were in a bit of a cold turkey sandwich war for a few weeks until it boiled over this week. I finally got a speck of a spine and confronted him more harshly on it, and he was still really quiet and shrunk, if that makes sense. Good, he should fear you. He looked like a mouse. I crush him, I guess how I would put it. Anyway, at some point he says something under his breath about the internet agreeing with him, or some BS. I know he uses this site more than me, as he has shown me posts every now and then, so I assume this is what he meant. I believe there was a post about this on this group earlier. This is Bad Roommates. I can't find it now, so I'm not sure if it's got taken down or removed or something. Correct me if that's not how this works. If it did get removed, I'm guessing it's because he has a hard time being serious and mature about stuff. Also, if his complaint is he stole your food and you're angry about it, please pity me. Yeah, that's going to get taken down. So, it may have come across as a joke. I'm not super sure what to do about this. I can't tell if I'm overreacting and should let him, or if I need to stand up for myself on this matter. I'll do my best to check any comments I get, but I may be a little busy, so sorry if it takes a minute. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you ever were willing to share sandwiches with this guy, that ship has sailed, so no, don't give him anything. You've been quite clear that you don't want him taking your stuff. I mean, you spoke to him twice about it. Once gently, didn't work, more harshly. So, if there's any way you can keep them in your room, if you're able to afford a small refrigerator or something like that, I'd do that. But at the end of it, you've been pretty thorough in how you feel about the situation, so he's just purely in the wrong for what he's doing. And as you say, you give them away sometimes, so if he just asked, maybe that would have been okay. It doesn't matter if you get the meat for free. I mean, you get the meat as a little perk of the job you do. I mean, it's not like anybody could just walk in and be like, give me free meat and get free meat. No. So he really doesn't have a right to it. So just be firm. Make sure. I mean, I'm assuming you've got separate shelves in the fridge, that sort of thing. You could maybe get a little lockbox or something for the fridge to keep your sandwich supplies in. Sad that you have to do that, but you've been pretty upfront with him. Don't do this. I don't want you touching my food again. And if he keeps touching your food, I'm not saying you should make a sandwich with laxatives, because that wouldn't be a very nice thing to do. But he'd remember. But I'm also not saying you should do it. Even though it's your food and you can do whatever you like to it, and anyone taking your food, it would be entirely on them if they have disastrous consequences. I'm not saying you should do it. Alright, story number 4. My mom's friend is staying with us, and she thinks our house is a fucking hotel. By And the Right Answer. So my mom let her friend stay with us as a guest out of kindness. She got divorced, her private sector job doesn't provide enough for her to survive as she wants to. And now she's living with us. She pays nothing, adds absolutely nothing to the table, and has turned our house into her personal resort. Oh, it sounds like she needs to be living within her means, not how she wants to live. We all have to do that from time to time. Here is everything I'm dealing with on a daily basis, from the annoying daily habits to the absolute worst. The ice cream and snacks and my mom's secret vent. Sometimes she brings home ice cream and some snacks. I mean, in a term, it is a bribe, but she's basically using it to try to smooth things over. But I ain't buying it. My mom secretly confessed to me she is completely fed up with how incompetent she is and how she doesn't help around. My mom was just being kind bringing her in as a guest, so she never forced her to do anything. The 5:30 a.m. wake-up call. Every single morning at 5:30 a.m. she has to do her hair with that loud-ass windblower. The Disney princess delusion. She's like 35 or 37. A basic white girl starter pack who believes in horoscopes. She's just lazy and incapable of being determined. 2 years ago, she had this idea of learning how to be a makeup specialist. I've been hearing about this on a daily basis since. But she never did it, and probably never will. Yeah, another type. She's also had a driving license that honestly needs to be revoked. A gran can drive better than her, but she still blames the car. She's just waiting around like a Disney princess waiting for Prince Charming to show up and save her. She's going to have to start leaving shoes in places. I genuinely feel sorry for the next guy who takes her. Something with the phrasing of that. Zero boundaries in the shower and kitchen. Basic roommate etiquette is dead to her. She doesn't wash her dishes, rips us out of hot water, and spends serious time in the shower. Even when she takes cold showers. Well, no wonder Prince Charming hasn't come along yet. The Wi-Fi leech. This bitch literally has 2 phones and a generous amount of her own internet. But what does she do? She connects to my fucking mom's hotspot. Before she came here, my mom's 50 gigabyte Uradu plan easily lasted the whole month. Wow, really? You mustn't do a lot of interneting. Now it doesn't even make it. We have to use the extra money in my mom's Uradu account just to cover her draining the data. That my mom doesn't get mad about it. She is a straight-up parasite. The Space Invader. She took half my closet space. No. My brother and I literally had to box up my winter clothes and put them in the attic just to preserve space. She even took over my boxers drawer. I have a stack of them next to my t-shirts now. Some other got donated. The Resource Drain. Since she showed up, our weekly fridge that usually stacks perfectly for 6 to 7 days barely passes 4 days, 5 if we're lucky. She eats more than me, she's fatter than me, because she eats more than you, and gives me advice about eating healthy. The AC BS, the trap. The AC situation is complete BS. I'll be sitting alone in the living room and I'm about to shut it down, but the second she goes in there, if I shut it down, I get in trouble with my mom. But if I don't shut it down, I get in trouble with my dad. I'm stuck in the middle of this headache, but thank God my little brother is actually comprehensive of the BS that is happening here. Playing the bigger person and pushing back. If my mom and I are having a conversation, this bitch loves to jump in to play the bigger person and lecture me like, "How dare you talk to your mom in that tone?" Which is just what she tells herself in the shower to feel important. Whenever she tries to talk to me about stuff that concerns me, stuff she has absolutely no business interfering with, I immediately push back by bringing up her own flaws to shut her down. I finally got fed up and told her to shut the fuck up in a light way, just out of respect for my mom. She has the survival skills of a potato, the fire. This is where it gets dangerous. We had a fire start behind our yard this week. A mattress was on fire next to a gas valve. My mom panicked. My dad and brother were on vacation, so I immediately grabbed a bucket of water and went back and forth 5 times to put it out before it reached the concrete wall. This bitch? Just running in circles in her pajamas with her phone, doing absolutely nothing. She called the emergency line. They hung up on her. Not sure what happened there. And my main job the whole time was just shouting at her to keep the lane open so I could actually fill the bucket. At some point, Ma secretly tells me that she's just fed up with how incompetent she is and how she doesn't help around. Well, your parents can kick her out at any time. And they're going to keep putting up with this until they decide enough is enough. You're right when you say she's a parasite. She's just taking advantage of all of you, and she will keep taking advantage of all of you for as long as she is permitted to do so. So what if she's accustomed to living a certain way? Not your problem. And fifth and final story is advice on past roommate stealing bank information to try to pay his bills. Call the police. By Mysterious Inside, 934. Up until recently, I lived in California with a full-time job. There were 2 other roommates in the 3-bedroom apartment I shared, 1 male, 1 female. The male roommate seemed to always have a hard time making ends meet and finding a job. He would come to us and profusely apologize when he was short on an internet payment or utility payment. Because I was once in that position when I first moved to California, I told him it was fine as long as he paid rent every month on time. But as the month went on, the limitations of his payment grew shorter and shorter. First it was a late Wi-Fi or electric payment by a week. Then next month it was 2, the next 3 weeks, etc. And then it went to he couldn't pay the Wi-Fi or the electricity or the utilities because he was so broke he couldn't afford food. We spoke to the apartment about his lack of payment. They said they couldn't do anything about it because we were on a joint lease. Ugh. Then the late rent came. First a week late, then 2 weeks, then 3. Then before my lease ended, the last 2 months he was short $200 on his $700 a month. And didn't have any plans to pay it. We spoke to the leasing office again and again, told him that he was the only one who didn't have the rent. Once again, we were all on the lease, so we were all liable. We tried to transfer to a different apartment number, but in order to do that, we had to replace our spots on the lease, which no one wanted to fill. Because who would willingly join someone that doesn't pay, right? So we were stuck waiting on the lease until we could leave, paying half and all utilities. Wi-Fi, electricity, and any late fees he would rack up at the risk of being evicted. Finally the lease ends. I move out of state. Being my financials have been drained. We sign a roommate release form, and my account is taken off the portal to pay rent. Woohoo! Before I left, the male roommate came to me with his leftover rent and utility bill and said he didn't know how he would pay it. Both bills ranged from $400. But because I signed a roommate release form and my release was up, I said it was his responsibility now. It was always his responsibility to figure it out because I wasn't liable. A week later, when I'm out of state cross-country, I get an email from my old apartment saying that the rent for April, which I left in March, was authorized by my bank account, but it was returned because there wasn't enough income to cover the rent, which you don't have to pay because you don't live there. At first, I thought the male roommate might have accidentally pushed the wrong payment button on the portal for online payment, because that would be an honest mistake. But after a call from the leasing office, I was informed that my information was wiped when I was taken off the system completely, which means he got my bank information and manually put it in for the rent. That son of a bitch found an old turn-up check from a garbage bag from when I was moving and saved it. Panicking, I went through my charges in that last week I was moving to see if there was anything off, and lo and behold, I found a payment from my bank account for $400. The exact amount that utility bill was, that I said I wasn't going to pay because I wasn't liable. I called the bank and changed my account and reported the transaction, and got it refunded, but my parents are stating I should file a police report against him. I'm just wondering if I should. If you think anything will come out of it, yeah, he'll learn a very valuable lesson. I would like for him to get some sort of retribution for what he put me through for the last year, but if it's going to amount to nothing, I'm not sure. You don't know unless you try. I live out of state now, so any advice would be greatly appreciated. Or if you want to agree he's a son of a bitch, well, he's not a very nice person, but I don't know his mother. Makes me feel better too, thanks for letting me vent regardless. Update time. I did decide to make that police report on my roommate because of what I shared before. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the story, sadly. Long story short, I called the refrigerator company I rented from to come pick up the appliance I wasn't using anymore, since I didn't live there. I had texted my roommate for a week straight, saying they were coming to pick up the fridge and to either call the office and approve their entrance into the place, or to be home and let them in. No response. The day comes, the truck shows up, and there is no written permission anywhere, so the workers can't get in. I call my previous roommate and he doesn't answer the phone. I think he thought that if he didn't answer the door, he could just keep the fridge I paid for every month for free. Big mistake. Now I'm pissed. I called him again, and when it was sent to voicemail, I threatened to call the cops on him, and magically he picked up mid-voicemail and let them in to receive the fridge. Then a day later, after I wrote the report, I wake up to emails saying that he tried every card and account I had in the system to get the $3,000 rent to go through. And it actually did. On my poor mom's credit card. He's not burdened with intelligence, is he, if he thought this wouldn't be traced back to him? So my mom had to get all new accounts and make a police report also. Fun times. But now I'm free, thank God. Hope you enjoyed this train wreck of a post. Well, I hope he gets severely spanked by the law for what he's done, because that's multiple cases of fraud he's committed. I don't think a little jail time would be out of the ordinary for that. But at least you're free. Hopefully all the money that was missing has been returned to the respective owners. And you didn't mention anything about your other roommate, so I'm assuming she's probably cool. And hopefully she gets the hell out of there soon as well, because... And that brings us to the end of today's video. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. If you'd like to support the channel, you can sign up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. $1 or more gets you early access to all the videos at once on Monday. That's $1 or more a month, not just $1 or more. I had a point. Sorry, it's late at night, it's 22 minutes past 4. There's a cat meowing outside. And I've had a busy day. It's been a busy day. I was out getting groceries. I had a good chunk of a book I'm working on to get done, and now recording this. Good, satisfying work, but it does me at the end of the day. I'm going to go have a nice cool drink after this, of the probably ginger beer or rose lemonade. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Patreon. There's also merchandise. Store is linked in the description, as well as my Discord server, my Threads account. And if you need to contact me, that's kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's everything for now. So until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye bye.